Good morning. Welcome to our Red Tara practice and contemplation. Hope everybody's well today. I don't know if it helps or not to have the microphone, but we'll try it. So, we're contemplating this book written by Lama Shenpa Drolma based on Chagdud Rinpoche's teachings, Change of Heart. And we've contemplated the chapter on equanimity and the chapter of transforming anger. And now we're going to start the chapter on awakening compassion. Basically, it's a slow, detailed contemplation of the training in bodhicitta, specifically through the four measurable qualities. So Rinpoche says, compassion is not a theory, but a feeling, an experience. It is not something we acquire, nor is it created by some biochemical process. Compassion arises in the immediacy of the moment when we see suffering directly and realize the difficulty that beings go through. And worse still, they almost invariably respond to suffering in ways that will only intensify their tragic condition. A natural quality, an aspect of our own true nature, compassion lies dormant within us and must be awakened. This awakening is painful because it requires us to contemplate deeply the suffering of other beings. Without understanding their predicament, we cannot feel compassion. But once we truly comprehend it, compassion begins to arise within us, and we cannot stop it from flowing. At the present moment, our compassion is biased and restricted. We feel that some are worthy of it and others are not. The compassion we have for our family and friends, for example, is based on our attachment to them. But everyone, no matter how misguided, actually deserves our compassion. We need to expand it until, no longer limited by attachment, it encompasses all beings in all times. If we watch the evening news, there are plane crashes, fires, earthquakes, social and economic disasters, wars, terrorist attacks, and all the horrifying examples of pain, suffering, loss, and death. To give rise to compassion, we must put ourselves in the shoes of those touched by tragedy. If we only watch from a distance, removed and isolated, we will become hardened to the misery around us. When we vividly picture their reality in intimate detail, the compassionate resolve to relieve their suffering naturally awakens. For example, imagine a desperate mother dying of starvation in a drought-stricken country, helpless to prevent the slow deaths of her children. Parents startled by a call in the middle of the night with a stranger's voice informing them that they have lost a son or a daughter. A frail and quiet man whose wife in a convalescent home cannot remember his name. A child whose playground is a war zone filled with sudden, random, and impersonal violence. A woman who has just lost her best friend to cancer. It's not hard to picture these lives that so easily could become our own. Imagine as well the suffering of animals. Every creature values its life just as we value ours, but we are often unwilling to acknowledge this. A fisherman doesn't know or care that a fish wants to live, that the hook cuts and tears. An insect scurries away to avoid being crushed. Domesticated animals endure lives of difficult labor. Cows are separated from their calves who call out to them through the night, sensing approaching slaughter. Smaller animals are eaten by larger animals, which are in turn devoured by parasites. All along the food chain, animals are subject to constant predation. Even our pets suffer. They become sick and old, and often die in great pain. They are completely dependent on us. When we leave the house, they have no idea when or if we will return or whether they will be fed and cared for. The worst suffering of animals and humans is 1,000 times less severe than those beings in the lower realms. If we become more and more aware of what it must be like to be a hell being, we will never become disillusioned with our human existence, despite terrible illness, chronic pain, a miserable family, or abject poverty. Our own fortunate circumstances become apparent even when we think about suffering in the human realm. For example, at this moment, we are not experiencing malnutrition or watching our children starve to death. There are no bombs falling on our city or our homes. Our business may be having difficulty, or we may have dry rot in our walls, but at least we are still alive. We can feel the sun shining through the window, see the trees, and look into our children's eyes. We are not, for example, on our deathbed. Even the poorest of North Americans are better off than the impoverished in other regions of the world. In parts of Asia, people go for years without a home or enough to eat. On the other hand, in the United States, many people experience great stress and emotional imbalance, and the suicide rate is high. We rarely appreciate the quality of our lives, choosing instead to fixate on our problems. If we lose a job or a lover, we obsess about it day and night. A paper cut can completely steal our attention. Compassion reduces our own suffering by putting our experience into perspective and releasing us from the tight grip on our self-focus. Then we can begin thinking about how to alleviate the suffering of others. When I was in the United States these last 3 weeks, it's interesting. My mother's in a convalescent home, doesn't recognize us anymore. Actually, occasionally she does. I think she said my name twice in 3 weeks, which was very precious. And my father's going through cancer treatment. So two of these examples Rinpoche gave, I recently experienced in my own life. And also, I went to visit my aunt who's dying in Portland, Oregon. And when I was in Portland, my cousin picked me up, and I can't remember what was the situation exactly, but he said, "Oh yeah, that's a first world problem," kind of like a joke. And it's really true. A lot of the things that we worry about or obsess about that are difficult in our lives, those of us who have a easier life, they're really first world problems. For example, we came back from our trip and our washer machine was broken. So we have this huge luxury of being able to buy a washing machine and don't have to wash our clothes by hand. And then if your washer machine breaks, you have to call the people to come out, and then they make a time and they don't show up, and then the parts don't exist anymore, and then you have to special order the parts, and it's expensive, almost the price of a new machine. Well, that's a first world problem. Brazil may not be exactly a first world country, although maybe the south of Brazil could be considered first world. I don't know, but we need to put our problems in perspective. If we compare most of the things that we go through to the horrible suffering that countless beings are going through at this very moment, our problems don't seem so severe. And that's the point. Take the focus off of ourselves and put the focus on others. And our problems don't seem so big anymore. And ultimately, if you completely put the focus on others and lose yourself in service to others, your problems really disappear. Lose yourself in compassion to others. Lose yourself in service to others.